I am 91 years old, and there is something I have never said out loud. Not to my friends, not to my neighbors, not even to the priest who buried my wife. For 54 years I have carried it, like a stone, sitting right here in my chest. And now I am running out of time. If you are listening to me right now and your children are still young, hold them a little tighter tonight, because I made a decision when I was 37 years old, a decision I once called necessary. Funny how we dress up selfishness with important words. I abandoned my children. No, I didn't disappear overnight. I didn't vanish without warning. I left slowly. I left with promises. I left with explanations that sounded responsible. But I left. My daughter was 6 years old. She had this little gap between her front teeth. And she refused to smile with her mouth closed. She said hiding her smile felt like hiding happiness. My son was 4. Every evening at exactly 5:15 he would stand near the door, because that's when I came home. He thought I controlled the sunset. He thought the sky changed color because I was arriving. And one day I decided I was meant for more than that small house, more than those small routines, more than being somebody's father in a quiet town. That is how pride speaks to you. It doesn't say, leave your children. It says, you deserve more. It whispers, you'll come back better. I had an opportunity overseas. A business partner told me, 5 years of sacrifice and you'll never struggle again. 5 years. That's what I told my wife. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just looked at me and asked one question. Will they remember you? I laughed. Of course they would remember me. I was their father. I didn't understand that presence is what makes you unforgettable. The night before I left, my daughter climbed into my lap. She asked if I would still tuck her in from far away. I told her yes. I lied. My son fell asleep holding my finger. He had this habit. He would squeeze it twice before drifting off. 2 little squeezes. I didn't know that would be the last time. At the airport they cried. My wife didn't. She just held them tightly. And I walked away, telling myself I was building their future. The first year I called every Sunday. The second year, every other Sunday. By the third year, I was too busy. Busy, such a convenient word. I sent money home, more money than we had ever seen. New furniture, better schools, bigger gifts. I thought I was being a good father. But children do not hug bank transfers. They hug arms. Birthdays passed. My daughter turned 10. I wasn't there. My son lost his first tooth. I saw a picture weeks later. They used to send me drawings, stick figures labeled Daddy. After a while, the drawings stopped. Phone calls became shorter. My daughter would say, "Mom says you're busy." My son, he stopped getting on the phone. Silence is louder than anger. 5 years passed. I wasn't rich enough yet, so I stayed. 2 more years, then 3, until 10 years had passed. 10 years. When I finally returned home, my daughter was 16. She ran to me. She nodded. My son was 14. He shook my hand. I remember thinking, why is he being so formal? Because I had become a guest. Guests get handshakes. Fathers get hugs. I tried to fix it with money. University tuition, cars, anything. They explanations, they were polite. Politeness is not love. One evening I heard my daughter laughing on the phone. She say, "My dad lives overseas," even though I was sitting in the next room. That sentence stayed with me. Years passed. She couched down. She asked her uncle to walk her down the aisle. She said she didn't want it to feel awkward. Awkward. My son, I watched him hold his baby girl. He never put her down, not once. I unsoft him, why? He comfortable want her wondering where I am. That was my inheritance. My absence shaped the body loved. Ma 4. At the funeral, my children stood together. I tit slightly behind them. After the burial, my song survived, Dad. We Soutines. Not, we missed you. Not, we needed you.
This house is quiet. Too quiet. Sometimes I sit here and listen to nothing, and the nothing feels loud. I have photographs everywhere, moments I wasn't present for, birthdays, vacations, ordinary Tuesdays. I would give everything for one ordinary Tuesday back, for one more 5:15 knock at the door, for one more tiny hand squeezing my finger twice. 2 squeezes. If you are listening to me right now and your children are still young, hold them a little tighter tonight, because I made a decision when I was 37 years old, a decision I once called necessary. Funny how we dress up selfishness with important words. I am 91 years old, and regret is heavier than any success I ever carried.
The doctor stared at my blood test results for a long time. I remember asking him, "Is something wrong?" He didn't answer right away. Then he slowly pushed the paper toward me and said something that changed my life. "Your body has been drowning in sugar for years." I laughed at first, because sugar had always been part of my life. I grew up tasting it in my mother's kitchen. I worked with it every day in a sugar factory. and I drank it in my coffee every morning. How could something so sweet slowly destroy a person? If you are holding something sweet right now, a soda, a candy, a cookie, I want you to do something for me, just for a moment. Look at it. Really look at it. Because I spent most of my life doing the opposite. I never looked at sugar. I just trusted it. And today, at 91 years old, I am living inside the consequences of that trust. If someone had told the younger version of me what sugar would do to my body, I would have laughed. Not because I was foolish, but because sugar never looked dangerous. It looked like happiness. It smelled like celebration. It tasted like comfort. But the truth is, sugar does not destroy you loudly. It destroys you quietly, slowly, patiently, one sweet moment at a time. Let me tell you how it began. When I was a little girl, sugar was rare, very rare. We didn't have jars full of candy sitting around the house. My mother would keep a small tin container on the top shelf of the kitchen cabinet. Inside that tin was sugar. But we only used it on special days, birthdays, holidays, sometimes Sunday mornings. And when my mother baked something sweet, the whole house smelled like magic. I remember standing in the kitchen as a little girl, watching her sprinkle sugar into batter. I would ask, "Can I taste some?" And she would smile and dip her finger in the bowl. Then she would touch my tongue with that sweetness. Back then, sugar felt like a gift, something rare, something precious. But life changed as I grew older, and sugar became something else entirely. When I turned 19, I got my first real job. It was at a sugar processing factory just outside our town. At the time, it felt like a blessing. The pay was steady, the work was honest, and the building itself smelled like warm caramel and molasses. Imagine walking into a place every morning where the air itself smells sweet, where piles of white sugar are stacked like mountains, where workers scoop it, bag it, weigh it, move it all day long. At first I barely noticed it, but after a few months something strange started happening. I began craving sweetness constantly, not occasionally, constantly. At work there were always small samples around, little pieces of sugar candy, sweet syrups, tiny taste tests. We were allowed to try them. Quality control, they called it. Quality control. That's how it started. A small taste, a quick nibble, a spoonful here, a piece there. It didn't feel like addiction. It felt harmless. Everyone around me was doing the same thing. And slowly, without realizing it, my body began expecting that sweetness every day. By the time I was 30, sugar had become part of my routine. Coffee in the morning, 2 spoons, sometimes 3. Biscuits in the afternoon, dessert after dinner, sweet tea before bed. I told myself it was normal. Everyone enjoyed sweet things, right? But there is something dangerous about working around sugar every day. It stops feeling like food. It becomes background, like air. And when something becomes background, you stop noticing how much of it you are consuming. Years passed. I got married, had children, worked long hours, and sugar followed me through all of it. When I was tired, I reached for sweetness. When I was stressed, I reached for sweetness. When I was celebrating, you guessed it, more sweetness. By the time I was 50, my body had already been swimming in sugar for 3 decades. But the consequences were still quiet, still patient, still invisible. The first real warning came when I was 62. I remember the moment clearly. I was sitting in my kitchen drinking tea, and suddenly my vision blurred. Not completely, just enough to make me rub my eyes. I thought maybe I was tired. But then it started happening more often. Blurry words, headaches, unusual thirst, constant fatigue. I ignored it, because ignoring problems is easier than facing them. But eventually, my daughter insisted I see a doctor, and that doctor changed everything. He looked at my test results and said something I will never forget. He said, "Your blood has been drowning in sugar for years." Drowning. That word echoed in my mind. He explained that my body could no longer control the sugar in my blood, that the constant sweetness I had enjoyed for decades was now slowly destroying my organs, my nerves, my eyes, my heart, my kidneys. Diabetes. That was the word. A simple word, but it carries a lifetime of consequences. The hardest moment came a few years later. I was walking across the living room when I suddenly realized something strange. I couldn't feel the floor beneath my feet. Not properly. It felt like I was walking on thick cloth. The doctor explained that high sugar had damaged the nerves in my feet. Nerve damage. Permanent. That was the moment I realized something terrible. The sweetness I loved had been stealing pieces of my body for years. Quietly, patiently, without asking permission. Now I am 91, and my relationship with sugar is very different. The jar still sits in the kitchen, but now I look at it with caution, sometimes even fear, because I know what it can do. I know how slowly it works, and how easy it is to believe everything is fine, until it isn't. If you are young, listen carefully. Sugar is not evil, but it is powerful, and power must be respected. Enjoy sweetness when you are young, but do not build your life around it like I did. After 40, start paying attention. After 50, be careful. And after 60, your body deserves protection, not constant sweetness. Because when you reach the age I am now, you begin to understand something important. Health is not something you repair easily. It is something you protect every single day. If I could speak to my younger self, the girl standing in that sugar factory at 19, I would say one thing. Enjoy sweetness sometimes, but never let it become your everyday companion. Because some companions stay longer than they should, and sugar is one of them. I cannot change my past, but maybe my story can change someone else's future. And if it does, then the sweetness that hurt me will finally do something good. Marriage. Marriage is a journey, isn't it? So many people think it's about us, the husband and the wife, living our lives together, building our dreams. But I've learned differently. I am 82 now, and I've seen a lot. I've lived a life full of choices. Some I wish I could take back, some I would never change. And if I could speak to young mothers, young wives, I'd tell them this: put your children first before your husband. Yes, I know, that sounds strange, doesn't it? Strange, maybe even wrong. But let me explain. When I was a young woman, I believed what everyone told me. I thought marriage was about devotion to your husband, about making him happy, keeping peace, being the perfect wife. And I tried. Oh, how I tried. I cooked every meal just right. I kept the house spotless. I smiled when I didn't feel like smiling. All for him. And you know what happened? My children, my little ones, they suffered. I remember my firstborn, my little Clara. She would sit at the table, her tiny hands folded, looking at me with those big eyes, wanting attention, wanting love. And I was busy trying to be the perfect wife. And I missed it. I missed her childhood. I missed the bedtime stories, the scraped knees I should have kissed, the little song she sang that I should have joined. Marriage isn't wrong, my dears. Love isn't wrong. But the truth is, the people who need you most are your children. And I learned that too late. When my husband was alive, God rest his soul, he was a good man, most days, but sometimes he demanded more than he gave. He expected admiration, service, loyalty, unquestioned, and I gave it, not realizing that my children were quietly standing in the corners of the house, watching me, learning what it meant to be loved, to be seen, or not. Let me tell you something I wish I had known at 20, 30, maybe even 40. A marriage is temporary in ways you don't see. Husbands change, husbands leave, husbands pass on. Children are forever, and the bond you build with them now will carry you when everything else falls away. I once read somewhere, if a woman raises her children well, she raises a family, and if she raises her husband well, she raises a man. And I thought, yes, but raising your husband sometimes comes at the cost of raising your children, and that cost, the cost is far too high. So, what does it mean to put your kids first? It doesn't mean neglect your marriage. Oh no, I'm not saying leave your husband in the cold, but I am saying prioritize them. Listen when they talk, even when it's inconvenient. Laugh at their silly jokes, even when your husband rolls his eyes. Sit with them when they're scared. Hold them when they're sad. Be there, really be there. Because one day they'll grow up and you'll realize those moments, they are everything. I remember my son David. He had trouble in school, trouble with friends, trouble with life in a small way that felt enormous at the time. And I was caught up in arguments with my husband. I was tired, frustrated, wanting just one quiet evening. But David needed me. And I wish I had learned to see him first, to hold him first, to hear him before I answered the call of marital duty. Your husband, he will survive, he will be fine, but your child, that tiny, fragile heart, it may never forgive you if they feel unseen, unheard, unloved. And I speak from experience. I see now, as an old woman, the love of a mother, the time spent with your children. That is your legacy. That is your immortality. That is what matters when the nights grow long and the fire dies down. I am not bitter. I am grateful. I am grateful for my children. I am grateful for the love I did manage to give them. I am grateful for the lessons I learned, even if they came with regret. And I want you, the young wives listening, to learn from me. Learn without the heartbreak. Put your kids first. Don't apologize for it. Don't let society shame you for it. Don't let your husband's ego make you feel guilty. There is no greater joy, no greater duty than to raise children who feel loved, safe, seen, and cherished. And when your husband comes to you, let him share your heart, yes, but don't let him take precedence over the little hearts in your home. Hold your children first, every time, and you will see a love in their eyes that no other love can match, a bond that will carry you, protect you, honor you, long after the world has moved on. I say this with all the wisdom of 82 years. I say this because I've lived it, and I've seen the consequences, both the bitter and the sweet. And if I could go back, I would. I would choose differently. I would choose my children first, every single time. So, my dear ones, hear me now. Love your children. See them, hear them, hold them, guide them, cherish them. And the rest will find its place in time. But your children, they are forever. Put your kids first, always, and you will have lived a life full of true love, a life that will never be forgotten.